Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is a very interesting and scary search and rescue entitled My Friend and I Joined a Search Party. Let us get straight into that. About a week or so back, Mike calls me up in the middle of the night, audibly excited, telling me to turn to channel 12. He hung up with no other explanation, but I knew what it was about. He'd found something interesting on the local news and wanted to barge into someone's personal business, something along those lines. I turned on the TV and flipped over. It was a report about a college girl that had gone missing in the city. You don't usually see reports that old. The news ADD is too advanced. But this one was a little more notable. Apparently, a worker had spotted this chick just wandering around in the sewers. She didn't respond when he called out to her. Didn't even give him any mind at all. Said he tried chasing her, but she turned a corner and just vanished. She'd been missing for a week or so at this point, and everyone was pretty sure she was dead. So, for her to just pop up out of nowhere, and in the sewers no less, was pretty surprising. The police were launching a new search down there, but hadn't found anything. They had a statement from her sister attached to the end of the sympathy points, and then moved on to some reports on pus in the local milk supply, which I didn't care to know about. Now, I wasn't super interested here. Had my doubts about the worker's story in the first place. People love to play on existing drama for attention, and hell, who was to say he wasn't involved somehow, if you get my meaning. I didn't even need to call Mike back to know he was set though. We're talking about a guy who spent 3 weeks looking for a cat because the picture on the missing poster showed it had a pattern in its fur that looked vaguely like a hot dog. In his words, I gotta touch it, man. It doesn't take much to get him excited. He showed up at my job the next day to ask me to drive 3 hours to the city and join a search party in the fucking sewer for a girl we don't even know with absolutely no compensation. He doesn't accept money for this stuff, even if it's offered, which it usually isn't. I had been ready since he called to say, no fucking way, but knew he wasn't going to take that for an answer, so I didn't bother, meaning we had a little road trip ahead of us. He greeted me when I got off work with 2 small backpacks, one for me, one for him. Each one had a flashlight, goggles, some gloves, water bottles, stun guns in case of hobos, and those respirators you wear around mould and asbestos. I figured that was overkill, but it would block the smell of nothing else. And Mike loves to over-prepare. I guess it makes it more fun. We headed off in my car with Mike promising to pay for only half the gas despite this being entirely his idea. And I settled in for a nerve-wracking trip on the freeway. On the way there, we discussed our plan for the search. The girl's sister had started a Facebook group or something for the search party and was giving updates and coordinating and all of that. Mike chimed in with a on our way like we were some hotshot task force or something, and she responded with understandable surprise that we were going so far out of our way to help, but thanked us nonetheless. Aside from a small section of city's police force and a few friends, there was no one really looking for this girl. I wasn't thrilled about the prospect of getting covered in grime for all of this, but I did feel for her. It had sucked to realise just how few people were willing to come looking for you if you're in danger, especially when the majority are doing it out of obligation and not concern. Even if I was tagging along for Mike's sake, fuck forbid he gets stuck down there too, and we just add to the problem. The ride ended up being shorter than I thought, and we arrived just before dark. Heading over to one of the entrances to the sewers where the party was gathering, we met up with the sister to introduce ourselves and explain why 2 random guys from several towns over had come to join the search. Now, Up to this point, the only visual I'd had of the sister, who introduced herself as Mary, was from the news report, and in it she was only shot from the waist up. So it surprised me to see her walking to us with the assistance of a cane. She had baggy pants on, so it was hard to see, but you could tell there was something not right about her left leg. It moved at an odd angle, and every step she took just looked uncomfortably rigid. She was clearly used to it and could move at normal speed, and there was nothing really odd about seeing someone with a bad leg. But it just caught me off guard. Like when you meet someone you've only talked to on the phone for the first time. You fill in their image with details about yourself that you're familiar with, and they never look like you expect. I just assumed, normal legs. It was uncomfortable having that assumption overturned. Mike didn't miss a beat and headed straight over to shake her hand. He explained we help out with things like this as a hobby and began probing for details. The girl we were looking for was named Annie. Brown hair, blue eyes, 5'4", all the usual descriptive traits. I finally caught that I was still staring at Mary's leg and broke out of my trance to ask if she could think of any reason her sister would be in the sewers. To be honest, I was still a little skeptical about the sighting itself. Why the hell would she be down here? Just showing up out of nowhere after several weeks? Unless the worker was lying, it didn't seem like foul play was involved. But if that was the case, why run away to the sewers? Mary told us that the only thing she could think of is that they used to play around here as kids. Weird place to explore. But she said it was mostly Annie that liked to drag her along. Fascinated by unexplored territory, I guess. Reminded me of a certain someone. Apparently, Annie still came here from time to time, and last Mary had heard from her, she said she was thinking about heading over here. I didn't say anything, but that bothered me. Putting that small timeline together. Mary hears from Annie that she's going for some fun in the sewer system. She disappears for weeks and then just shows back up seemingly unharmed. No supplies, no food, no water. The only assumption is that she got lost. But then, what was she eating? There's no way you could live down here for long. Something wasn't right. And as much as I hated to admit it, Mike was right about this one. It was interesting. Maybe the hobos got her and are keeping her as their queen or something. That was Mike's attempt to idle chatter while we explored the sewers. No homeless people live in the sewer, man. I made sure my stun gun was easily reachable. Mike started to elaborate on his theory, but was promptly interrupted by a deep, drawn-out moaning from down one of the pathways. Not like pain or spooky, scary ghost moaning though, more like the kind you hear out of somebody that just found something interesting, only it was way too long. We paused for a moment and radioed on the crappy walkie-talkies the cops handed out for a search to ask if anyone else heard it. We got several no's and also an advisement that we were the only ones in that section of the sewer system. The other pair apparently pulled out after one of them fell in a pile of shit. I asked the cop over our team what to do, expecting him to investigate it himself. I instead got a "be careful" from his lazy ass, and we continued on toward the source of the sound. I looked over at Mike to see him taking big gulps from his water bottle, having to lift his mask in the process and basically negating its use. I was about to point this out when we heard a new noise, something like water from a shower head hitting the ground. Rain. It was fucking rain, and we were in the sewer. I glared at Mike. He looked back at me and I could see his cheeks rise behind his mask in a playful, sorry expression. You see, I had asked him to check the weather on the car ride over. "We're good," was his response, ignoring the cops telling us all to put out on the radio. I calmly asked Mike what the fuck he was thinking coming down here with an 80% chance of rain. He sternly responded that if it was going to rain, that was all the more reason to find this girl tonight, and he knew no one else would be as dumb as him to stay down here. My words, not his. I understood his reasoning, but I was too pissed and, honestly, scared to stay down there any longer. There was a little manhole a little ways away with a retracted ladder. I started over it, with the intention of having Mike help me reach it. If he wanted to die down here, that was his business, but I was getting the fuck out. It's important to mention it had gotten pretty dark at this point. I couldn't really see where I was going, and Mike's dollar store flashlights weren't helping. That's important so that the following can't be attributed entirely to stupidity. I slipped and fell down a slope in the walkway. I landed smack in the water. Mike was heading to help me up in a second, making sure not to slip in the same spot. He jumped into the city's waste with me before I could tell him to watch his radio. So, now we were both out of communication and the slope was too steep and slippery to get back up, especially now that we were both covered in water. We had been given maps to navigate should we get lost, so we got out of the shit to check where we were. They showed that we were basically had nothing but a straightforward walk ahead along a curved tunnel to the next exit. Another manhole cover. Go figure. Now, aside from the retracted ladder, we'd passed no exits or forked paths since hearing the moan, so I was a little on edge. Mike either didn't notice or didn't care, and I tried to put the thought out of my mind that we were probably going to encounter whatever it was along the way. To my surprise, we encountered nobody on our path, homeless or otherwise, and we were quickly coming up on the manhole. Whoever it was couldn't have passed us. It wasn't that dark, and there were no way they moved through the water without us noticing. The only thing I could think of was that they'd left through the manhole as we rounded the curve to the end of the path. I became certain of that. The water was ankle deep here, so I didn't notice it at first, but Mike pointed out a draining noise coming from close by. We looked around, and then I saw it. It was a manhole, right where the map said it would be, but it was on the ground. I checked the map again. This couldn't be right. I knew it said this thing led up, and even if it went down, why put a cover on it? Sure enough, my and Mike's map had a little up arrows next to the manhole symbol. I wasn't the only one a little hesitant to go down there, but we couldn't back up, so this was our only option. And maybe the map was just misprinted. Another exit further down. We descended the ladder for around a full minute and eventually touched ground in another tunnel. Well lit, but looking considerably more water damaged than the ones we'd been in previously. The lights down here were odd to be sure, but weirder was the relatively dry floor. It was wet, of course, but there wasn't much water down here. I hadn't noticed it as we were climbing down, but the water had stopped draining from above. Nothing was coming down here, and the water that was already here looked clean. Cleaner than you'd expect in a sewer. It didn't even look like we were in the sewer anymore, more like some kind of access tunnel for the subway. But I knew that couldn't be right. We were way too low. Had to just be an odd design choice. Mike took lead once more and we started pressing forward. We made some small talk, looked over the maps again to see if this place was on there. It wasn't. And tried our best to just find a way out without getting lost. A couple of times I thought I heard voices. Something quiet, but not a whisper, like it was far away. Almost sounded like it said, boring, or something like that. Mike didn't hear anything though, so I dropped it and it seemed to stop for a while. Then it came back. We both heard it this time. A woman's voice, close and hoarse. Too hoarse to really understand, but that didn't matter. There was a girl down here, and chances were it was the one we were looking for. Mike sprinted off before I could say anything, and I did my best to keep up with him. The lights started getting fewer and farther apart as we went deeper, but I could make out that the walls were changing. It seemed like we were going down an ever so slight decline in the path, and as we did, the walls began to change from the large, curved grey brick and into straight and square, blank walls. No paint or any real features other than being a little too clean for down here. That wasn't really the biggest thing on my mind though, so I just continued following Mike. I'm not ashamed to admit that he's in a bit better shape than I am, and as I slowed down he eventually disappeared into the darkness. I stopped for a breath and called out for him, but got no response. I went into a light jog down the hallway, but quickly realised it was branching off in several directions. The girl's voice had stopped, and I had no idea what direction Mike went, so I kinda just stood there for a while thinking of what to do. Just as I was about to turn around and head back to wait for him at the ladder, I heard his voice on my walkie. I didn't think about why it was suddenly working again and asked him what hallway he took. I got some directions and headed off. The path he told me to take led to a door, like a wooden door, pristine, said 209 on it. Thing was out of place down here for a multitude of reasons, and I stupidly reached to open it against my better judgment. It swung open into Mike's old apartment. I could still see the hallway behind me. Walk out if I wanted, but, shit, I was intrigued. That sort of curiosity one might get when stumbling onto a crime scene or drunkenly breaking into an abandoned building. I walked in, almost in a daze, and the door closed. I didn't pay it much mind. I was entranced. This was by far the most interesting thing that had happened to me in quite a while. It was just the thing I was hoping for when Mike proposed this little side business. I wanted to know what was happening here, and death be damned, that curiosity had overpowered me. I examined the room. It was just like I remembered it. I think. Mike moved out of there and bought a small house like 3 years ago, so it had been a while, but as far as I could tell, it was just like he had left it. Then I saw his ceramic elephant. I remembered that thing too. Little ornate thing with imitation diamonds on it. I don't know what he liked about that stupid elephant, but I did know one thing. We'd broken that elephant, or I had, over his head. It was a big fight, my fault. We had it out pretty bad, like really beat each other down. It was about, never mind what it was about. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I hit my friend over the head with a gaudy ceramic elephant and put him in a hospital for 3 days. Piece of it got stuck in, I'm regretting writing this now. I don't like thinking about that day. Fuck it. I heard the moan again. Same as last time. Sounded like someone that had found something cool. It was coming over my radio this time. Then it spoke to me. I don't remember exactly what it said. I was kind of scared, as you can imagine, and wasn't paying a whole lot of attention, but I remember it asking, "What do you have?" It paused and made the moan again. Told me I was interesting. Then I heard my own voice. Then Mike's, then mine. Yelling, fighting, knocking things over. The whole fight, whole thing. It was playing out again over my radio. My fear was mostly subsiding, being replaced by, is there a name for it? The emotion you feel alongside avoidance. The one that pushes you to try and get away, break the radio, do whatever it takes to shut it up. Without thinking, I grabbed the elephant and smashed it over the radio. Blood seeped out of the speaker. I could hear the voice laughing softly through it, making more moans and noises I can't really describe. I bolted the fuck out of there, ran back down the hall, tripped on my own feet twice, just scrambled away. I turned a corner, mostly down on my hands at this point, and collided with something. I heard a startled yelp and felt something press against my back. Then I got a real nice shock. I looked up to see Mike apologising profusely for tasing me on accident. I still have a burn mark from that. I also have Mike's taser. He can't be trusted. He pulled me up and said he found the girl. Pulling my arm, he led me down the opposite hallway to another wooden door. This one was open and I could see Annie down on her knees in the middle of a small, featureless room. She was in front of a small bicycle. Mike leaned me against the doorframe and went to help her up. As he lifted her, I saw a screwdriver fall from her pocket. Mike didn't seem to notice and began leading her out of the room before helping me to move again. We headed back to the ladder after running out of a dead-end hallways and decided to see if we could help each other up the slope. I fell down. Once we got back up the ladder though, although the manhole was supposed to be there, had appeared. We were all exhausted, so no questions, just leaving. We got back up and got in contact with some of the search party. It was daylight and the streets were surprisingly dry for the earlier downpour. I found the cop that was over our group. Bit of my tongue over wanting to chew him out for not coming down there to investigate earlier. He actually did though. After the rain stopped, the whole party did. They had been coming down for 3 days. The girl downed both our water bottles on the way back to her house. I wasn't feeling so good after Mike decided to play Zeus, so he was driving. I was too tired to be unsettled by what the cop said, but it had given me my answer for how the girl survived with no food. We got back to her house and helped her in. Mary was of course ecstatic to see her safe and rewarded us with hugs. Nothing but hugs. Mine stung. I watched her head over to talk to her sister. I couldn't hear them, but Annie was visibly uncomfortable. Wouldn't make any eye contact. Mary said that something with a concerned expression, and Annie shook her head before heading off to a back room. Mary told us Annie was heading off to sleep, brushed off the discomfort as her just being tired. She didn't ask any questions thankfully, and we said our goodbyes before heading off. We got back in the car, Mike still driving, and started heading back home. My adrenaline was finally wearing off, as well as the brain haze from my electrocution. So, I was finally processing what just happened, what I saw. We sat in silence for a while before I couldn't take it anymore and needed to talk. I told Mike about seeing his apartment, the voice. I didn't go into detail on the latter half, but tried to tactfully bring up the fight, though it just came out kinda clumsy. I asked if he remembered the ceramic elephant. I fully expected him to change the subject on that, get mad, not say anything. He looked at me and grinned. Oh yeah, that thing? You knocked me a good one with that, didn't you? Guess I got you back tonight. Don't need to feel bad about it anymore. That really caught me off guard. I couldn't say anything back and he didn't try to make me. Just keep that carefree expression his face, the freeway lights making lines across him. Man, I didn't see anything like that shit. He paused. Hey, you remember that time we got drunk and thought it'd be fun to sneak into that condemned Chinese place? Jesus fuck, yeah I did. By we, Mike meant himself. Not that I wasn't of impaired judgment, but I'm not that crazy. It wasn't the sneaking in that was fucked. We got in easy and no one bothered us. No, we ended up daring each other to eat the leftover food in the kitchen. Shit, that went nuts pretty fast, passed through you crazy quick. Mike paid for my gas and on the way home. That's it, folks. I'm still recovering from that sting, but stuff is pretty much back to normal now, and Mike hasn't come up with any news since. I'm not really sure how to sign this off. How about I just leave you with a recommendation for a song that we heard on the way home. A song called God's Mistake by Tears of Fears. I'd forgotten all about that one. I always thought the lyrics were interesting. Wow. Hope you guys enjoyed that mysterious search and rescue story. Please do let me know down below in the comments. As ever, please do like, share, and remember, folks, be safe, not sorry.